we can see why it's important, but also it's more important every single day to talk about. Space sustainability is more important today after we had a successful Ariane 6 launch this morning than it was yesterday. It's going to be more important in a few weeks after we have a Blue Origin launch than it is today, right? The more objects that we have in orbit, the more we need to be thinking about how to make this environment sustainable. And when we talk about sustainability, it's really the ability for all of us to continue using the space environment, operating our spacecraft there to achieve civil services, to achieve science, to run our businesses and generate revenue, and of course on the national security side as well. And so to that end, I would like to ask each of our panelists to briefly introduce themselves and help us start the conversation by answering what are the components that are essential to maintaining our orbital environment. Essentially, what are the pieces to the puzzle of space sustainability? Tetsuo, can we start with you?
Maybe most of you have not heard of iQPS. This is a small company, but we are building a constellation of Earth observation by utilizing the SAR technology. So far, we have 7 satellites in orbit. To be exact, we launched 9 of them. 2 of them were lost in the course of the launch. And tonight, we'll be adding 1 more. It will be launched from New Zealand at about 3 o'clock this morning. Now, the most important for us is to avoid the collision between our own satellites. This is a must for a constellation provider, constellation operator. Well, why? Once there's a collision in the orbit, because our constellation operates at the same altitude, so we have a lot of chances of a collision in each other. But once you have the collision in the orbit, then it will produce a huge cloud of fragments. And the heaviest or the thickest portion of the cloud will be in the altitude of the operation. So we will be the person who will be most affected by the collision itself. So it is a must for us to avoid the collisions. That's my first portion.
Thank you. Sakthi?
Yes. Thank you. So I'm Shakti, founder and CEO of OrbitAID from India. So OrbitAID is a 4.5 years old startup, which is we are working on first Indian company on orbit refueling and especially on orbit servicing. We are focusing on life extension and all those things. We have built a number of facilities, especially it's the world's largest facility for RPO, reverse proximity operations. Can be done for close proximity and docking establishment. Everything we can able to do it in our facilities. And next month we are launching our first demonstrations in space. It's about for the docking and refueling. We are sending 2 satellites, and from one satellite to other satellite, we are doing that refueling demonstrations. And it is not only refueling and doing that power transfer and data transfers. So this is about OrbitAID. And coming to this question, yes, where RT is covered everything, and SAR is also covered everything, actually the collisions. So importantly, where OrbitAID is looking is, there is a collisions. What are the criteria for that sustainability problems is collision avoidance and collision main problem and lots of maneuvers and other things is important is uncontrolled debris things. So that uncontrolled debris is actually how we have to remove it is an important factor. So it is, people are saying that debris removal, and so we can able to do that debris removal for the controlled satellites. For uncontrolled satellites, yes, there's lots of impact is creating for that, not only atmosphere where it is uncontrolled re-entry, or it is affecting that atmosphere and oceanic things. So where we can able to support for that uncontrolled satellites, which can be converted into control and controlled debris removal, we can able to support it. That is actually major takeaway where we can say it.
Thank you. Aki?
Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Iwaki, co-founder and CEO of Astroscale Solutions. We are the Japanese startup doing the space situational awareness and supporting collision avoidance. And I'd like to answer the question about what is the key for the sustainable space activity. And I think that to set the space sustainability as an infrastructure layer for the all space actors, because it's like a safety and quality control. So it should be the bottom of the activity. So it's not the fancy things. So we should keep the minimum quality and minimum conduct, and including the collision avoidance. And we support the satellite operators for doing collision avoidance with optimized and automated data we can provide. And we face that some customers, for instance, operators, more than a dozen satellites, encounters over 300 conjunction alerts every single day. And by 2030, it is estimated that globally we will face over 100,000 collision avoidance maneuvers per day. So that's every 1.1 seconds. So we should prepare for that age. So we should put the infrastructure as a minimum requirement for the collision avoidance, including collision avoidance and sustainability.
Thanks. I'm Jack Deasy. I lead the business and market development activities for Astroscale in the United States. Eddie Cato gave a great introduction for those of you who got up early this morning and saw the first session, so I won't spend a lot of time reintroducing Astroscale. But sometimes our entity structure is confusing, so just to say, we have national-oriented units in Japan, in the UK, in France, and in the United States in order to support government and particularly space agency activities, all of which still very much has a sovereign component, and countries are very comfortable with local units. In addition, we have commercial business that goes across the globe. So in the United States, I lead the team that works with geo operators on life extension. And in the UK, they lead the engagement with LEO operators on end-of-life commercial solutions. And I think I come to this question very much with that perspective from the geo operator and the life extension point of view. We heard about the UN. The UN has been very important. I think the ITU gives a good example of how really complicated commercial issues can be addressed by consensus at international organizations, by including industry. And I really applaud the call for all of us as industry to work with our national delegations to engage with these issues of sustainability. But sometimes when the political level talks about sustainability, it's like no one ever thought about it before. And I think for us, in a lot of respects in business, the issues of sustainability are the business issues that we've always faced, right? How do you maximize the value of what you're doing? How do you minimize or mitigate risk? How do you control your CapEx in the face of fluctuating financial and investment markets? How do you maximize return on investment for when you do spend CapEx? All of these things are also elements, I think, of sustainability. And I would argue that getting these business issues right is a big contribution that industry can do to making sure that the commons that are the orbits are available today and into the future. So all of that is not going to lead you to be surprised to think that Astroscale believes on-orbit servicing has a really major part to play in that sustainability activity from the business perspective.
Thank you all for those comments. So, at the end of the last session, we heard Dara ask about, what is the potential impact of activities more connected to warfare or rising geopolitical tension in space on sort of the insurance world. How would you say it impacts the space sustainability world? We're seeing many of the major players in the space arena at a national level using space in different ways than they used to use it. What might be the impact of this on sustainability type activities? Jack, why don't we start with you?
Again, sort of taking one little angle of a really big question, right? I was struck when Dara was talking about this of how in-orbit situational awareness becomes really critical. It becomes critical to promoting deterrence. And this is an arms control model that goes back deep into the Cold War. You don't do confidence-building measures between countries that are friendly. You do them between countries that distrust each other. And having really good insight into what is going on in the orbits, convincing potential bad actors that they can't surprise companies or countries is all very much a part of encouraging good behavior. You could go a couple of different ways on that, but I'll pause there in terms of specific services that I think become relevant in orbit to promoting a sustainable business environment in the face of rising geopolitical tensions.
Anyone else want to jump on that question? Is there a risk that rising tensions makes space sustainability much harder, much worse? I think it just went.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Yes, definitely there is a harder, and there is, you see that there's, as Jack has mentioned, it's a lot of things is progressing, and especially this SSCI is actually growing things. And there's a sustainability market has to be improved, and there's a reliable, repeatable has to be happen. So definitely, so there's a stress on the not only that sustainable operator side, is especially in that insurance market side also. So how we can avoid it and all those things is, there's a new opportunities this finance model is creating for that sustainability. It is a space environmental, space economics that is creating actually. So that one we can use it and go forward, that is important things.
So going to the SSA side, since a few of you raised that, Tetsuo, I'm very curious, how has your experience changed over time in terms of managing orbital threats to your constellation, and has there been a change to the collision avoidance approach?
Okay, coming to the collision now, probably we look into how many objects we have in our space. And then we come to the US data in the catalog, and it says that there are 16,000 satellites and 2,400 rocket bodies and 13,000 debris. So total of some 30,000 objects. But now, this looks like a big number, but the cataloged object catalogs only bigger object, which is bigger than 10 centimeters. We have small bodies as well, and they are also hazardous, and many times they are, just hit and die. So when we come down to 1 centimeter, and ESA estimate that there are, let's see, 12 million objects bigger than 1 centimeter. So this is 2 orders of magnitude bigger than the number we have shown in the catalog. So most of the hazard that we have is caused by those small debris or small fragments, not the intact bodies. Well, intact, yeah, we have so many, but still, we have many, many of those small fragments. And now, where did they come from? Nobody have launched those small bodies except some government. They are the product of collisions and explosions. Explosions, non-intentional, many times, and sometimes intentional. And we don't think that we'll have intentional fragmentation anymore. And unintentional breakup also decreasing due to the lot of this technical standard that we have. So the rest is the collisions. So that's why we have to look into very carefully about the possible collisions. And for us as a constellation operator, we are glad that we have knowledge of all the objects, all the satellites in the orbit. We have the data of that so that we can control they do not come close to each other, so we can avoid that, the collision.
Aki, does that commentary align with what you're hearing from customers and the approach that you plan to take as you grow the business in collision avoidance?
Thank you very much. Yes, we are working with customers directly. Before I started my company, I was working in Vienna as a diplomat and worked with copiers and covered the copiers and adopted LTS guideline. And we decided in the adoption of the LTS guideline, the implementation is more important than just set the rule or guidelines. And that's why I started this company to work with this community and with satellite operators, owners, because they are shaping how the ecosystem react to the sustainability issue. And in the discussion with our customer, they all aware with the importance of the collision avoidance and aware with the risk of their operation. But how to react or how to manage is they require some expertise, and we have that developed in the R&D agency. JAXA developed such kind of tools, and we commercialize it to support more directly to the customer. And in this course, we found that each customer has different systems for their operation, and to implement their system, there are some, I can say, the customization is required. So by doing this, we're directly react to the orbital reality. So and the number of the close approach of the other objects is unfortunately increasing, and the number of the debris themselves are also increasing. So we see that the emergence for the reaction to the autonomous collision avoidance. So some operators doing the collision avoidance by manual, so people work for that. And one of the, I can say, the good news for me was that the customer said that he can go out for drinking on Friday with our service. So I can support, we can support the daily operation of the customer. So yeah. I'm proud of that.
That's a strong statement of support. Maybe I'll use your service too when I have my own satellite. So I want to talk about disposal. So as of right now, the baseline for GEO is disposal upward into graveyard, for LEO disposal downward to re-enter. But both of those have potential issues with crowding in graveyard, with atmospheric effects or oceanic effects if we have intact components that are re-entering. So are there alternate approaches being considered for end of life for spacecraft? So Sakthi, maybe you first, and then Jack.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, definitely. So GEO and LEO there is a solution to extend that life. So how we can extend the life is GEO has, we can do that life extension by two ways. One is for refueling, another one is by backpack. So life extension by refueling is for the upcoming existing satellites very difficult, and there is lots of regulatory concern is there to sharing the data and finding out and docking it is not easy things. So and all the walls, definitely you know that FDV walls is completely closed, so we can do that refueling. So with that one, so we can able to do that, where we can suggest is actually it's a life extension by backpack, so it can be auxiliary propulsion system attached and do the extensions. And definitely if it is uncontrolled satellites also, if it is there we can dock it and do that debris removal to the graveyard orbit. For coming to this LEO is, there is completely there's economics, whether it will work or not, definitely will work for the bigger satellites and costly satellites. For the small satellite is, there's an important, instead of life extension, instead of refueling, where we can use that collision avoidance so that further we can delay the debris things.
Thank you. Again, maybe going in a little bit different direction, but so the Astroscale founder, Nobuo Okada, is famous for saying to our staff, sustainability is easy. All you have to do is get your assets to work longer, harder, and smarter, and it gets done. What that means is we need capabilities, right? Which is what's so exciting about conferences like this. Our colleagues here, as we've been getting ready for the panel, have been sharing sort of what our different companies are doing, and we're seeing ways of taking our solutions and adding additional capabilities to them. So if you think about today, life extension is a service. You can do that, you can arrange that. People are planning their fleets with life extension as part of their fleet management plans in some cases. Refueling is becoming real. There are multiple refueling projects in the US, in Japan, in other countries, developing both concepts of operation and specific interfaces that will give operators another way of extending the life of satellites with perfectly healthy payloads just because they've run out of the fuel that they started with. I think that the same is true when you start looking now at the question in the future, what else can we do as we get more activity in space, as perhaps we get more challenged with the graveyard orbit for GEO and bringing things into the atmosphere of the ocean. You're starting to see some of the elements of what I think sustainability experts refer to as the circular space economy, and reusing and regenerating and repairing all become parts of this. Astroscale was part of an international group that did an initial study on taking orbital debris, putting it into an in-orbit foundry, and turning it into EP propellant tubes, for example. That's a long way from where we are today, but 10 years ago we would have said refueling satellites is never going to happen because no one's going to do it, right? So I think that both taking advantage of what we can do today as industry and also keeping plugged into where these things are going is a really important way, and encouraging our space agencies and other government agencies to invest in the development work, which is how space has always worked, right? You get governments that lead the way in some of this investment, and then industry picks up and uses, improves, maximizes the value of some of these solutions. I think that on-orbit recycling will be a big part of the answer to the question, Carolyn, that you asked.
You just saved me from having to ask another follow-up question on that, so thank you. Please.
You mentioned about the geo-graveyard orbit. I think it is safe to have the graveyard orbit, and we can be sure that we'll have no hazard in 1,000 years or so. It's a vast area. But one thing we have to be careful is that those objects may start to disintegrate themselves. Then this will be a problem. So probably we'll have to ask, well, Astroscale or someone to take care of those objects. But anyway, it is lucky that we have not done any of the serious breakup in the geostationary orbit. So that's it.
We're lucky it hasn't happened yet, but operators, I think, across all orbits need to be thinking about sustainability and orbital threats in advance of a potentially deleterious effect happening. And I mean, to that point, and some of what we talk about with sustainability, the pushback is, well, that's a long-term issue. You're saying, you know, even in some of these companies' mission statements, it's we preserve space for future generations. What about companies that are prioritizing quarterly results that they have to report back on to shareholders? Is sustainability something that those operators can and should pursue, or is sustainability only the responsibility of those with the leisure and the investment process to think long-term? Anyone can jump in on that.
All right, I'll start, but there's a lot of answer to that question. I think companies don't have any choice, right? I mean, space is a long-term business. It's a commons. We all have an interest in being able to access that commons. But I also think, kind of coming back to what I said before, thinking about sustainability purely in environmental terms, important as it is, misses that there are economic and operational sustainability elements as well. And those are things that we as businesses operating in space can address right now. So even while we're thinking about these other elements, and we need to, none of us have business plans that end in 6 months, so the future of the orbits is really important to us. But there are things we can do operationally now, and really the world 60 years ago, when the first ComSat was launched, there was one satellite for delivering commercial services. The sustainability concerns of Intelsat at that time were dramatically different than we face today. I mean, the numbers that we were hearing of things in orbit, right, they're always shocking. Even operational satellites, more than 12,000, right? And in that world, sustainability has a lot of dimensions, and we as businesses have no choice but to keep track of all of them, do the things we can do, encourages our governments to do the things that they have to do.
Yes, I agree with you. Sustainability is not only a long-term issue, because the single conjunction or the single fade avoidance cause a disrupt of the operation and drive up costs immediately. And even companies focus on quarterly earning must now begin to treat sustainability as an operational imperative, not just a public relation topic. And of course, government regulation also tightening the FCC's 5 years rule. And recently, ESA announced their EU announced the EU Space Act draft. And they are a clear example that those are not just a choice, but they are the compliance matter. So we should care about or should comply with the sustainability. And as an SSA company, we are also starting to see growing interest from financial institutions, including the main major banks, so who are now beginning to evaluate orbital risk as a part of their investment decisions. So the capital market are also interested in this sustainability matter, and soon access to investment and financing will depend on whether your company are managing their environmental change and risks appropriately and maintaining responsible practices in space operations. So those are very relevant to our daily lives and daily economical activities. So we think, I think that not the long-term issue, but the daily or the today's matter, I think.
Yeah, yes, I agree both the points actually. Definitely, so there's a long-term, there's a sustainability is there, so where we can lead it to that. So the government policy is coming and there's a industry has to be implemented, industry has to be approve that policy things, that is important. So that is the final things I wanted to mention is the very short notice. Yeah, so where that the short term or longer term, so there is a satellite operators wanted to show that there is end-of-life plans. That end-of-life plans we should not consider it as a compliances, it has to be taken as a credibility. So where if you prove that that is a sustainability things, can be converted into credibility and lead to the new opportunities.
Thank you. So we have an audience question that, this one, Tetsuo, I would love if you can answer. Kessler syndrome is thought of as a classic tragedy of the commons problem. There are two potential approaches. One, solutions for government regulation, and the second, users maintaining their own rules. What are your thoughts as to which of these options makes sense? Is there one more important? Do they go together?
It's a very difficult question to answer, but anyway. The government regulation, this is very difficult. Well, then somebody says taxation or something. Well, maybe that's one way, but it's going to be a long way to go. So I would rather take the users doing ourselves, because, as I said, the person who will be most affected by a collision is ourselves. So we have to protect ourselves so that our satellites do not collide each other. So we can do that. But one thing we cannot do, we know all the knowledge, we have all the knowledge of our satellite, but we don't have the knowledge of other satellites in other constellations, and we cannot manage those. And so this has to be, this is done by the United States right now, but probably our colleague will do that, something similar in the future. I'm expecting that very much. Thank you.
Well, you set us up perfectly for the final question I want to ask. We're almost out of time, and I think people want to head to the night market. We are in the early stages of space sustainability action, and so there is an opportunity for the Asia-Pacific region to become a leader in that area. I'm curious, what are your thoughts as to what that could look like? Is there appetite nationally or regionally to do this, and if so, what might steps be? Quickly. Aki, do you want to take that first?
Thanks. Yes, as I said, I had the privilege of serving as a Japanese diplomat in Vienna, and I took part in the adoption of LTS guidelines at the UN copiers. And around that time, following the US President Shao directive, SPD3, under the previous administration of Donald Trump, and I began to hear growing concerns in EU, especially from the European industry, that about the over-reliance on the United States for space traffic management and its rule. And the phrase strategic autonomy became a kind of a defining topic. And since then, the EU shaped their STM policy, and two system tracks and EU SST are now taking shape. In this international context, how Asia-Pacific government and operators respond will be crucial for business continuity. And because SSA and exchange of space traffic information form the infrastructure layer for all space activities. And some advocates for a single unified global catalog, but given the current geopolitical realities, such unification seems unlikely. So, but still, I believe interoperability and compatibility among different data catalog and CDMs are essential because it is inevitable for the operators to depend on some catalogs or some data. So to avoid the confusion, the interoperability and compatibility of each systems are essential to be achieved by globally. And governments, meanwhile, can play a constructive role, and at the same time, industry can set the standards for the interoperability, such as the aligned operation with like this format. And we should demonstrate best practice through the practical action, not only by the big players, but also so that all players can join to achieve this, the sustainability of this area.
I'll add it, last points. Yes, definitely this needed that impact. Already started, and especially there is a apex side is, so there is a necessity for that geopolitical side, and other than importantly, there's a more innovation is available here. So it is definitely is coming up, and there is a JAXA is already initiated, it is already demonstrating, and ISRO is done that debris removal controlled manner, actually controlled manner twice time recently, this is within 6 to 8 months, their rocket launch, final stage. So where the people are, where the both countries are working, so now there's a G2G dialogue is also initiated, so hopefully it will be turned back good.
Wonderful. Well, we'll hope by the time we're all back here next year, there has been more movement in this arena and within the region for space sustainability. Andy, I don't want us to overrun, so we can. One more comment, please, to close
okay,
this out.
you mentioned about the Asia-Pacific contribution, and I want to say that there's one big contribution we did, which is the geo-disposal. And this was proposed by the Japanese government in 1970s, and which was denied by one nation for 3 years in succession. And then I came in and tried to analyze why and how, and this was solved. And now we have the disposal, which is a rule. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. It's a very important role for us to have, so thank you for raising it. Thank you to all of our panelists for their thoughts on this topic. There's much more to discuss, so hopefully you'll join us in some of that over the next evening and day. And with that, back to you, Andy.
Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you again to the wonderful panelists.